Welcome to another episode of Not for the Weak Minded. Now, the previous video I just did, my t-shirt design, I was going to do about the symbol, the double axe symbol of God. I will do it, it's just that I thought I'd try and make this a bit more complex, and to do that I have to do something else, which is why I'm doing this video first. And essentially this is about the Sumerian king list, and essentially it's about time and civilization, and essentially how through time there's been good and bad civilizations, and how they've used that knowledge essentially has been a test. We are all in a test today, a test of faith, to understand that we are actually created and we are of the light and have a purpose against the rulers today, because they are not of the light, they are of the dark, and unfortunately through time they have created this civilization which many today are just accepting for what's the word, that's all they could have. Essentially that's all we can have in life, and that this is it, you know, this is the be all and end all of what we can be and have in this reality. It's not true, you know, we can manifest an amazing technological utopian future, but you need to know truth to do that. You need to know how they're using the truth with signs and symbols in front of your face as a language as well, to kill everything essentially. So you don't live in a good time, and you need to know about a previous time, many previous times in fact, to understand the Bible, to understand history, to understand yourselves and how you were created, potentially why you were created. It's very complicated. But anyway, the guy at the top, Alulim, who ruled for 28,000 years, 28,800 years, sorry, and who founded the capital city Eridu, he, according to Wiki, is associated with Adam and Eve. Now, this is the thing when you go look at the ancient literature, is that there is a lot of misinformation out there, and particularly when you just go look at the first page. So laughable it is, but I'll get to that in a minute. So this is just the first bit about what Wiki says about this. You know, it's very minimalistic. So he was the first king of Eridu and Sumer. But today they don't separate that location. So according to the Sumerianologists that most people trust, that i.e. the academics, Eridu is actually in Mesopotamia, and that's where Sumer is. So they mention two separate locations in the list, first king of Eridu and Sumer. So that's two separate locations, and yet they don't really recognize that that's two places around the earth which was founded at the same time by Alulim, which is actually, when we're going to get to it, Enki, the creator god, who is responsible for giving us a great deal of knowledge and information and downgrading us genetically. We'll get to that in a minute. Now I'll put the links about these two, you know, the wiki page and the other website that I'm referencing, just while I'm talking about this. So it was said to have brought civilization to Sumer as well as Eridu. Now we know where Sumer is, it's in the Middle East. Eridu according to some other researchers, is in South Africa. Potentially. It's in a different location. So anyway, then they go on to say that his reign was sometime before 2900 BC. Okay, that's granted, yes it was, but have you seen the reign list? 28,800 years, and then right after it they've got a quote from the actual list, you know what it says, and it says, you know, he reigned for 28,800 years. So it's funny, isn't it? You know, they're like, yeah, he ruled before 29,000 BCE, but you know, we're not going to say that he ruled for 28,800 years, but we'll put it underneath it, but we're not going to say it really, even though he just did, you know. And yet they don't take that into consideration, the academics. They literally use this tablet to reinforce history and characters like Gilgamesh down here, Gilgamesh, right there, and other characters I've been looking at today. And like I said, I could talk about this list, and you know, and how this could change history, and how there's cycles, for example, and it goes from good to bad and good to bad, and not necessarily that the bad guys always win. The good guys might just go all the way through 3,600 years. No, you're not coming out. See you later. We're not falling from grace like we are today again. Anyway, where was I? So this deity, who they're now calling just Adam in a bit, but this deity Alulim, who is Enki, is associated with a half man, half fish sort of counselor or cultural hero. Now they put in brackets Apkallu, and then Ioana Adapa, and Oiones of the Babylonian, who is a Babylonian god. You see, they have been mixing history together to create a massive lie about history itself, and that's just the prime example, really, of how they're twisting. They know the truth, but they're twisting and adding things into it that don't belong to it. But a lot of people would believe it because they're twisting it to make you believe that it's not Enki, Alulim, but it's actually Adapa and how that's associated with the stories of the Babylonian literature rather than the Sumerian literature. And if you know about Babylon, you'll know it fell from grace and it literally got washed off the face of the earth, i.e. the Great Deluge. Now earlier I was looking up names and I found some interesting things to do with another flood that happened. So there's actually two floods, whether it's the mentioned. So there's two floods. And I had a feeling there was a flood before, but I didn't see the reference to it within the king list, but there is a definite reference to a secondary flood that took over the earth. So there's two great floods, at least through history we're talking about, where things have been washed away. I do believe, it's that mental. So this Wikipedia site, suggests that he's the equivalent between Alulim and Enosh in the Sethite genealogy. So I've not actually read the Sethite genealogy, but anyone else, it's in chapter 5. His name means stag, and according to Wiki, he's a contemporary of the biblical figure of Adam, who derived from Adapu or Adapa of ancient Mesopotamian religion. So they tell you where Adam religion comes from, but they're really saying, nah, he's equivalent to the Babylonian god. Not really, and how that's kind of not how that one figure has been used through time to mean two different things. It's crazy, and unfortunately, this is how you've got to look at everything. You've got to see how there's the duality of signs and symbols in front of you. You've got to look at, and if you can't, if you don't even see that there's something associated with it, there is. I'm telling you, absolute 100% with everything. You literally have to boil it down to, well, there's a good and bad, and I have to look at the good and the bad to understand it, and if you don't know, you have to look at research things. So anyway, they are using ancient history in a way to convince you of a lie, and this is why today you see the signs and symbols of Rome, and this is why they use Latin, which is a completely dead language, but only the elite and the Catholic Church use it, and they inscribe their monuments and then their thing, and they use that language for a reason, because it's associated with a culture which was completely sinful, got done over by the gods, or by the people living at that time, let's say. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the heavens to stop their evil ways. People just have to wake up and realize they've been lied to and go, hang on, what can we do? Well, we can do a great deal of things if we actually know the truth and alternatives. You don't actually have to go into the depths that I'm trying to do, to uncover and re-put history back together. You just got to see that you live in a good time and you've been lied to about everything, which is hard enough. Start watching the television, and then when you start learning these things, watch the television again, and you'll go, oh, I can see the signs and symbols, I can see it easy, and you'll get angry like me. Mrs. just, she gets it, but she can't watch anything really with me, because I'm like, do you see that? Do you see what that was about? Oh, I did mention that was a sneaky reference, wasn't it? These type of things, they drop these things in there. I see that fucking flash image all the time, and it's increasingly getting worse and more satanic every day, and particularly the stuff that the youth listen to, whether it's gangster rap with their, the gangster illusion, to a lot of sick satanic metal as well. Poppy, for example, is disgusting, unbelievable stuff that's on that the youth are listening to, and you just think, holy moly. All that suggestiveness is going into their ears, and they are believing of it, even if they don't even know they're believing in it, they are. This is how it works. Power of suggestion over and over and over again. Repetition. So ancient pages, again, references that, that there is a similarity to the Babylonian god Oannes, and how that it was also a mermaid deity, who was half man and half fish. So and again, this is things that they don't mention now, but it does say on the tablet that kingship was lowered from the heavens, the gods established 5 antediluvian cities of the gods. It's not just there was 2 separate locations, there was 5 separate locations, and I'm pretty sure that's just not right either, there was 7. But anyway, I can't prove that yet. So according to this site and archaeology and all history, what we've been known to taught and been told to be truth today, the king list was produced at the end of the 3rd millennium BC, probably during the dynasty of the Ur. So according to that, the most sacred site was Eridu, and it was the home in the faraway belt, which was the seat of kingship. So this place was the most sacred of all the places they built. Eridu belonged to Enki. So Alulim is Enki, right? Because Eridu belonged to Enki, that's what it says, and Enki is Alulim, or in Greek, Alores. These gods go all the way through history. They get called upon in the time of Gilgamesh and continually through the list. If you look at history, they get called upon all the time. Now and this has to do with the demigods and creation, and there's 2 sides to that too. So Enki, he was the god of creation, intelligence, wisdom, and magic. He was the creator and protector of humans. He was a skilled craftsman, brilliant scientist, a geneticist, and an engineer. So there's a date from a scribe within the text, and that, according to what we know, is now down to 2125 BC in the reign of King Utuk Hegau of Uruk. Now, I haven't got all three of the things pictured, and I should have, but that name is Utu Hejau, and he is on the list, absolutely on the list. And he was a king that ruled for I can't remember now, but anyway, I can't remember exactly, but Utu Hejau, I'm pretty sure that is Utu Hejau. And so there's, we have a date there if we're going to go with what, we've been accepted. However, I'm going to have to go through time and try and put it back together again, starting from the beginning and going from what we know today and the 3,600 years, as I've tried to say in other videos. But literally, I've got so many projects on the go, I just don't have time to do it all at once and to try and prove what I know to be true, or my knowledge, my interpretations of things. So he was one of the first native kings of Sumer after centuries of Akkadian and Gutian dominance as well, Utu Hejau. So I have referenced about the Gutian army in here and stuff, and they did rule. This stuff is real history. It's a part, this is real ancient history over thousands and thousands of years, which is heavily incorporated in what the Bible is about. But as you see, today, the translations of the text when they were made wasn't accurate because they didn't have technological references, and secondly, they've mixed Babylonian and Sumerian stuff to convince people back then, probably in Babylon, of a lie, using truth. Because all truth comes from the gods, which descended from the heavens, and that comes from, Sumer, right? One of the places of the gods, right? Which was Eridu, and that was founded by Enki, who was a half man, half fish god. And today we are, in fact, part reptilian, part fish, and part mammal, genetically. So it is this is where Enlil comes in later on, and us as a species, you know what I mean, and how we've got reptilian in us perhaps, and how we're a different species to other species that was created by other beings. You see, there's two sides to creation, and so there has to be at least two different humans. Do you get that logic? Being created, one at the start and one at near the end, and how they, it's complicated, and this has to do with underground worlds. What we've discovered about the population sizes on the earth at one point in time. There's millions of people that once lived upon it, and from LiDAR sites of ancient cities that we can't see with our eyes, but we can see through good actual investigations using technologies. LiDAR, for example, if you looked at the stuff LiDAR's found across the earth, you'd know that billions of people lived on the planet at one point, and that civilization is not there no more. It is eradicated. We have pieced together as best as we can history through the artifacts, and unfortunately today the academic society has not done so. They've hidden artifacts, they've labeled them out of place, they've not told you the truth, and you must look at every single thing possible and try and put it all together as a massive puzzle of which, you know, I'm not saying even I know it all. I've been doing this probably easy over 10 years, looking at everything possible to try and make a decent picture of everything, and it's not easy. You know, you look at what you have to do to understand this world, understand everything. You don't have to go this deep, but you know, when you're curious, you just keep looking. Oh well, looks like I just lost a bet with my dad. No. So various names in the list of reigns are actually lists of their successive chief officers, and not names of gods to whom the witch cities were granted as cult centers. However, Eridu was forever granted to Nudimud, an epithet of Ea or Enki or Alulim. That meant he who fashions artifacts, and it remained a cultural center forever, no matter who was chief admin or king. Sipar was the same, with the god Utu. In Akkadian, Shamash or Shurapak was and that's the city, Shurapak, or Kurapak. Ubaratutu is rain, they're right there. At the end, Great Flood, Babylon, right? Who was linked to Sud, which meant medic. So each of these places, according to Sitchin, they had different functions. One was an airport, Supar was a place for medic, and where Eridu was a place for crafting artifacts. Do you see what I'm saying? There's things that you kind of have to put together in a different way about history and what's really going on, and unfortunately that involves so much to do with geological time as well. It's crazy. You know, you have to incorporate this with geological time. So anyway, this is not where I'm going. I'm going with to Adam and Eve story still. Well, this relates to that. So in one of the theories today, one of the 7 demigods, known as the Apkallu, possibly could have been Alulim instead, as we've just mentioned, that the kings could have been mentioned, but not the god, the deities. And so there is, you know, some potential connection, which I don't think it is personally, that suggests that this Alulim is Adapu, who is one of the Apkallu. This is hard. Who is one of the 7 demigods, who was created to establish culture and give civilization to mankind. Interesting enough, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the list there. So they could have been, you know, semi-demigods and then a big massive 4, which is why things changed. I don't know. Anyone know where Bad Tibera is? Where that would have been located? How about Kick? I know I'm changing it and I'm just pitching, because you gotta know. I know Kick. I fully think that's in North Africa. Absolutely, I think so. It's Kish, I think, but I can't be sure. You know, I have to prove it. I have to go look at all the names and where they ruled, and it takes time. I've got many things to do. So anyway, these beings, these demigods, were created by Enki. So it's either Enki created Alulim, who is actually Adam, the first created, you know, Adapu, or whoever it is, again, On is in Babylonian culture, who was created to establish culture and give civilization to mankind. So mankind was already existing according to that, and then the demigods were created to what? Rule over us then? To establish civilization? So who really rules us today? The demigods rule us today, because they came to establish culture and give civilization to mankind. Unfortunately, it's evil demigods today, not the good ones. So it's, potentially it's the line of Enlil and not the line of Enki. The duality of kingship and whoever was in charge and all the other things, the rulers. So they, actually, the demigods, the Apkallu, served as priests for Enki. They were advisors sages, to earlier kings of Sumer before the flood. So they were around, humans were around, mankind was around, and before the flood we were controlled, we were given civilization by seven demigods known as the Apkallu, who were created by Enki. Interesting, right? And they were advisors later on of the kings of Sumer before the flood, before the great deluge. So they were fish-like men who emerged from the water, Absu. Now there is some reference to potentially Absu being down near South Africa. But however, the thing it says next potentially has everything to do with my drawings and the mechanisms and power of creation. So the primeval sea below the void space of the underworld, the Ker, and the earth mat above. So there's a water source, a primeval sea, that is the void space between the underworld and above the world, the earth. Strange. So these seven sages, they are encountered in Sumerian, Babylonian, legends of Egypt, China, ancient Greece, India. So the whole world cultures, tribes, have these wise men in them, these seven wise men. The story of, 3 wise men, well, that's where it comes from. The 7 tablets, the 7 days of creation is the 7 tablets of creation, the epic, the Enuma Elish. You see, everything has been twisted, but it's also mistranslation. It's also, so those people that believe in God, it's complicated, isn't it? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's multiple gods at one point, but there is also, through that line, some of those kings or deities or gods, rulers, did actually consolidate all nations under truth. You know what I'm saying? And they did do these things like Jesus did. You know what I mean? All the stories are actually based on real history, but we just don't know the timeline, you know what I mean? And everything's out of sync, and unfortunately it's just like, it's a massive puzzle. And we have tried very hard, our humanity, to solve it and try and do the right thing in this world, and we're still holding on. Morality wise, I mean, most people, even though they should be protesting about 3-year-olds getting LGBT lessons, that they should. It's not right. And if you knew the implications of that on their subconscious mind growing up, and how that connects to mental problems, you need to look at the work of Jordan Peterson, professional psychologist. He'll tell you the truth. He'll tell you that it will damage them and it will cause serious problems, mental health issues, over which sexual orientation there should be. All for the power of suggestion that they've created this gay agenda to begin with. because they've lied to you about everything, about creation. Well, they use that knowledge about everything. You know, everything most people don't even want to look at to do with creation, you know, to do with religion, to do with the Bible, because they've programmed you to hate it. Not to look, not to care. To think that everything in the Bible is right as well is delusional. Yes, there's truth in it, but it's not wholeheartedly truth, is it? So, the names associated with Alulim and his successor, Alajar, are Adapa and Uanduga. So according to Professor Shia, there are parallels between Adapa's epic and Genesis. And she says that the principal parallels are readily apparent. So Adapa and Adam both underwent a test before the deity, which was a test based on something being consumed. Both failed the test and thereby forfeited their opportunity for immortality. As a result of their failure, a certain consequence passed upon mankind. What could have that been? What consequence did Adapu, failing that test, what was it? You know, I mean, that's the question right there. Leaves it open, you know. As a result of their failure for this test, certain consequences did pass down upon humankind. You know, was it age restrictions? Look at the ages. You know, was it that? Perhaps. You know, we have to ask certain questions, and you need to look deeper. And you know, I can't answer all of it. There's so much out there that everyone, the collective, has put out. You know, you just got to look at snippets of everything and go, oh, hang on, that he's not quite right, but that bit's absolutely 100%. Like, you know, you can't deny that. And that's where you try to slowly change your mind and your perception of everything. So there are small differences according to other authors. So for example, from the Genesis story in the Bible and the Adapa epic, Adapa epic and Genesis comparison, that the commodities for consumption were different. In the case of Adapa, there was bread and water, while Adam and Eve, it was obviously the forbidden fruit. A test, but the test was ultimately for good and evil. Interesting that today forbidden fruit has associations with paedophilia. Wonder why they failed the test. What was Adam doing in the garden with the forbidden fruit? I'm going to leave it like that. Please share, like and subscribe.